The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. Thrilled to be here with you this morning. We're in Tower 1 on the 18th floor. This is the new home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's their headquarters. It's also the new home for Autism Live. And we are coming to you from our very new studio. Thrilled to be with you on this Wednesday morning. Have a lot of stuff that we're going to be covering this morning. I want to remind you that it's Wednesday. And on Wednesday, we like to start with Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us. She's going to be answering your questions in real time in just a few moments. And then in our second hour, we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And I believe that Nancy Allspaw-Jackson is not going to be able to be with us today. We're moment to moment checking in on that, but I know we'll all give her our good thoughts if she isn't here today because, as I reported to you yesterday, her husband has been having some more health issues. And so we would rather that she be able to take care of that. But some really important news that we have that we're going to be covering during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We'll touch on that a little bit with Dr. Granpeesheh in this hour. But we'll have some very special guests. We're still finding out who from the Autism Society of America is going to be joining us. And we also have Vince Redmond, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, who's going to be with us talking about topics back to school, how we communicate efficiently with our schools, especially in light of some things that have happened here in California in the last week, all of which we're going to touch on in just a few minutes. But I want you to know that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to participate with you. We want to hear from you, your thoughts, feelings, concerns, and questions. Kelby is going to show you some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us, while I remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. So much to do on that page. Please sign up for our free email newsletter. When you do that, you will also get a weekly viewer guide that will key you into what's happening, what days we're here, because sometimes we're, especially in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some things long distance that you're going to want to know about where and when to be watching. I want to remind all of you, I broke the news yesterday that we are going to be having a rather extended period of time with Temple Grandin coming up in just 2 weeks, and we'd like some questions from you about what you would like to know from Temple Grandin. See if you subscribe, you know all these things, right? Or you will know all of them. In any case, on that live feature, you can be on our homepage, you can be watching the live show. You can watch the most recently recorded live show. In fact, you can go back a total of 100 episodes on our website by clicking on the little memo. It's the playlist. It looks like a little memo board up in the upper left-hand corner. Now, to the side of all that, we call that the live feature. It's a series of white boxes. If you will put your cursor in the one that says your question, you can type there, hit enter, and that's really all that it takes. You don't need a login, a username, a password, a credit card. You don't need any of that. It will show up here on my screen. In that way, you can be talking to our experts, and you can also talk to me, and you know that we find that very reinforcing if you watch the show at all. So, my friends, it is time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We welcome Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
As many of the people who watch the show on a regular basis know, you are an amazing expert in the field of autism,
thank you,
having
Shannon.
worked in this field for multiple decades. We so appreciate all the work that you have
It's a
done and the
pleasure.
work you continue to do. I always like to remind everybody, including you, that even more than being an expert in this field, you're a visionary in this field.
Thank you so much. You're very kind to me.
No,
I love my
honestly,
Wednesdays. I get reinforced.
Oh man, I like it. I will then keep saying that because it's so important that the world has you and the work that you've
Thank
done.
you very much.
And I know the things that you talk about that you want to do, and I see you rolling those things out. It's pretty impressive. And
Thank
so
you.
we thank you for your entire body of work.
Thank you very
And the
much.
energy that you have brought to this field, and how concerned you are for everyone, the kiddos, of course, but the parents and the practitioners that you have taken. I've said this before about you behind your back. I don't know if I've said it to your face, but I think one of the most amazing things about you is that it wasn't enough for you just to take what you learned and to be doing that with the kiddos. You understood the importance of being able to share that with the next generation and the next generations. So you train. And as a former teacher, you know, it's one thing when people are talented. It's another thing when you're able to convey that to other people in a way that promotes their talents, and that's what you've done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have some pretty amazing people who very early on connected with me. One of the blessings that we have many things that we've been blessed with, and one of them is that we have, you know, over 20 people who have been here for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And you're having one of them on the show later,
Yes,
Vince
Mr.
Redmond. But also people like Cecilia Knight, who is in charge of IBT, and Jenny Akos and Teresa. I mean, there's so many people.
Yeah.
I would keep going, but these are the folks who have just taken it all in and are incredible teachers to others. So
Yeah.
we're very lucky.
It's amazing. And the legacy of that's really what it is. You created a legacy of people who understand how to get to the progress that we're all looking for, which is
Right.
really, truly amazing. So
Thank
we
you.
thank you, and we thank you for spending an hour with us every week to answer questions
pleasure.
from our viewers. You guys can be writing in the live feature now. We had a lot of questions that came in, and I cherry-picked some. One in particular that I wanted to, because last week on the show, we had an opportunity to show a video with Brett Myler, and he is one of the young people who was featured in the film Recovered, and it was at the 20th Gala for CARD. It's now 5 years later, and I haven't seen Brett since then, except yesterday he walked by my office, and I said, "Is that him? Is that Brett Myler?" I made him come in, and we had a nice little chat and talked about at some point getting him on the show. But somebody wrote in and said, "Hi Shannon and Dr. Doreen, thank you for sharing the video with the incredible young man, and we'll be looking up the 20th Gala too, because you mentioned that there were other videos available as well." And they said also for the tissue alert, because we tell everybody it's a 5-hanky affair watching that video. It's
Yes,
just,
it is.
you know, just if you need a good cry, that's the thing to watch, my friends, because it's the happy cry. Okay, so then she goes on to say, "We have a one-on-one for my 14-year-old. Any ideas on how we can use this resource for socialization goals? He is high functioning, and thanks so much."
What a large question,
Right?
And you know, I'll do my best to answer it. But we always, as we always like to remind everyone on the show as well, you know, many of the answers are not specific to your child. We can't really go into too much detail because I don't have the opportunity to know every individual that you write about.
Thank you for saying that. I forgot to say
No
that this
problem.
morning. There's never the possibility of somebody giving
Right.
individual specific advice in this format.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be, it's not conducive to that, and it wouldn't be fair to the individuals.
Absolutely. So please, you know, kind of take it with a grain of salt, I guess, and just see if it applies. And from what I can tell, you have a one-to-one. That's wonderful. It's a very, very huge question in terms of how do we use this resource for socialization goals. That's a tough one to answer because I don't really know where your 14-year-old is on the spectrum or what skills he or she has currently. I guess I'll try to keep it short, but give an overview or some direction for you. This is specifically the reason that I developed skills. So I would highly recommend that you take advantage of skills. Skills will give you numerous content or lesson plans that have to do with increasing social skills. And there's a whole section called social skills. That's one of the 8 domains that we cover. And when you go in there, it'll show you many different things like social conversation or just I don't know, how to interact with others appropriately, body gestures and body movements that are conducive to social behavior. How to maintain a conversation with someone, how to listen to others, how to take turns in social. There's a million different things. How to have different social behavior based on the context, contextual cues, who you're talking to, where you are, and so on. So I would really recommend that you look there, because those various lessons will give you an idea, or will give your one-to-one ideas of things to work on. Now, having said that, there's also kind of a different thing you have to follow, which is we generally do some activity with our individual one-on-one, but then it's very important to generalize that to the public. So if you have the one-on-one, and let's say the one-on-one is practicing the social conversation lessons, which on its own are probably about 20 different sub-lessons in there. And if the one-on-one is working on those types of things, like for instance, how to repair a conversation, how to initiate a conversation, that's one's very common, so let's talk about that one. You do those various techniques, and once the child has kind of mastered that, then you want to make sure that you're also doing those techniques with other 14-year-olds or other individuals who are peers, or typically developing individuals who would then allow your child to practice his skills. So that is a very, very important aspect of social behavior. Now, the other thing I want to say is that all of our kids have strengths, and it's very important to identify those strengths. When it comes to social behavior, it is incredibly important. So most of the time we tend to socialize with people people who make us feel intrinsically reinforced, I suppose is the way to put it. So for instance, you're not going to hang out with people who make fun of you or don't appreciate your talents. So you will need to identify a social group for him. A lot of times for our kids, that might be gamers who are very good at gaming. If your child is very good, 14-year-old, I think, boy,
Yes.
Yes. So, he might be very good on computers. So you might want to find a group of kids who are into gaming. That is a way that this generation has started to socialize, is that they basically will communicate through things like online with each other first, and then they gradually establish relationships that way and get to know each other.
Yeah, they play a game together online, and they're
Exactly.
talking to each other while they're playing the game. I mean,
Exactly.
that is for all kids right now, for boys, I should say, but for some girls as well, that is the base of socialization in that window. It's
It
crazy.
absolutely is. And even when you look at girls, the form of social communication has much more become text
Yeah.
than verbal. And it's important to stay with, allow that to happen, because it is what's in our environment, and it's what's in our kids' environments. So whether it's computers or music or art or dance or whatever it is that you feel your son is good at or has a propensity to develop, then I would really encourage that, because the more we have a skill that we feel comfortable with, that we excel in, the more we have a sense of self-esteem. And self-esteem is very important to social behavior. So, and we actually even have lessons on how to increase self-esteem, but that is a very important thing as well if you want to develop social skills.
I can tell you that one of the big shifts for us at school was when we had skills on board, and I got ready to go to the IEP, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, what things are not in GEM's IEP that I would really like to see? Mm-hmm. And they were all social goals. So I went into skills and said, well, if I were going to do 3 lessons, what would they be? And I had skills put out the IEP language for me. I went to an IEP with that, and they said, oh, you want these social goals. They wanted to rewrite the goals to what they wanted, and you will find that schools will want to do that. But the thing about it is, because I came in with well-written IEP goals that were specific to his social thing, they wrote them into his IEP, and that's when your aide will have to do it, and they'll figure out how to implement it. And
That's
you
right.
can do that as well. I think one of the hard things for parents is when you go into skills knowing where to look. You might know exactly what the skill is that you want, but you don't know what the name of it is in skills.
Right.
They have some of the most amazing people in the world working in skills now. You can call them and say, here's the lesson I want, what is it called?
Right.
They'll be able to tell you that, and it will be so quick. And the cost of it will be a millifraction of what it would cost you to get an educational consultant.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And you know, on that subject, thanks for saying that. That's true. We do have a lot of great people working in skills, but also, I mean, it has a search function which is intelligent,
Yes.
so you can actually put words in, and
Yeah.
it'll pull up all the lessons that have to do with those particular
Absolutely.
things. But you need something like that. You can't just, you know, assume that having the child around other peers with a one-on-one is going to be enough. And I don't know if this is an aide or if it's an in-home therapist, but whoever it is, they will find a heaven of lessons in skills, and they'll know how to proceed from there.
Absolutely. It's amazing. And then write back to us about what you ended up doing and
Yes.
how it goes, okay? And somebody said, so thankful for Dr. Doreen to come and answer questions on her one day in Los Angeles,
Thank
because
you.
last week you were only here for
Yeah,
one
and
day.
this week I'm leaving again tomorrow for Washington, and next
busy
week I'll be leaving on Thursday for Australia. So
Yes.
I'm always here on Wednesdays. I try to be, but it's always something.
It's thrilling that you do find the time for us.
Thank you.
I think we should take a quick break. Then we're going to come back and answer a question from a young woman who has written to us before. It's her first time living on her own, and she's having some problems with a guy down the hall and wants to know how to deal with explaining to him that she is not his girlfriend. I think this is a
Good question.
great question. We're going to be back with more Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of the children and all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago. There were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, you know? It is just, and I feel like, you know, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grant Pichet. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grant Pichet.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Piché. She is answering your questions in real time. Before the break, I mentioned to her that we had a question from a viewer that has written into us before. She's a young woman on the spectrum who has just set out on her very first apartment, which is very exciting to her. She wrote in and said, there is a man in my apartment complex who I suspect is on the spectrum. He has himself convinced, all in capital letters, I am his girlfriend and is making me feel like the cat in Pepe Le Pew cartoons. How do I get him to realize that I do not want a relationship with him? And she had written to me separately as well, saying that she has verbally said, you know, I am not your girlfriend, and that doesn't seem to be sinking in. So, and I love how descriptive, do you all remember the Pepe Le Pew cartoons with the skunk who was constantly, actually I think he was a cat and kissing a skunk and she didn't want anything to do with him. But in any case, I would love your advice on this, Dr. Graham-Piché.
Well, I mean, this is a tough situation, but I think you'll have to continue to be very upfront and continue to repeat the message. You know, this is not necessarily going to be something that's limited to an individual on the spectrum. I think a lot of people like to ignore that message of I'm not interested, but I mean, the basic things that you can do obviously are explain to him that you are not interested, that you are, I think you should probably even go into explaining that it makes you uncomfortable. And if you need to go further, you can explain exactly why it makes you uncomfortable. You could say, everybody has space around them and you come into my space, or I worry that every time I come back home, you're going to be there and I want my privacy. Or, you know, kind of be a little bit more descriptive about exactly what it is. And remember that he may not understand what it means when you say, I'm not your girlfriend. And you may, if you have the time, want to explain to him that, you know, I like you as a person, but I don't want to spend time with you every day and so on. And then I would say, you know, if it's really making you very uncomfortable, then you should probably try to find his relatives or family and maybe have a conversation with them, because obviously they know him much better and are able to perhaps help explain things to him better.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. I mean, this is tough for all young women.
It is very tough.
And it's tough, I think, for all young men.
This is an incredibly tough for men.
Yeah, and it doesn't just have to do with autism, but then when you throw autism into the mix, it makes it more complicated.
It does, because our young men don't often read social cues very well. It is a program that we have because we've had a few of our young men sort of be referred to as stalkers, and they're not really trying to be stalkers. Obviously, they have an interest. They find you to be reinforcing, and they have the, keep in mind, of course, their biggest deficit is the ability to perspective take. And so he has a problem seeing your perspective. Yeah. So he cannot understand that you are uncomfortable in his presence. And it isn't necessarily your job to teach that to him, but it is certainly beneficial to him, and I would think his family might want to help him understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, I think this is such a prevalent thing. It was a storyline in the last season of Parenthood with Max Burkholder, that there was a girl that he really wanted to date. And when he asked his dad, you know, how do you get somebody to like you? And his dad said something like, well, you know, make sure that you're perseverant, you know, that you tell them that you like them and let them know. And of course, he took that to too far of an extreme, to the point where the girl said, you can't be around me at all anymore.
Yeah.
And watching the family deal with that, you know, it's devastating for everybody. It was devastating for the girl. She said, I like him. I'd like to be friends with him, but I now can't be because he didn't listen when I said don't do that. So being as clear as possible, but I think first and foremost, as Dr. Graham-Piché was saying, you know, you get to have your boundaries.
Yes.
You don't, just because he doesn't understand doesn't mean that you have to be made uncomfortable.
Yes, yes. And that's really, really important, because if you go back and forth because you feel bad for him, then he'll get a very confusing message. So don't feel bad. This is absolutely your right to have your own space and your own privacy, and to choose the people who are in your life. And you need to be very clear on that, because if you are, if you waver a little bit, if you feel sad for him or guilty or whatever, he'll be confused. So please be very strict about your boundaries and make sure he understands.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to be back with news. We're going to talk a little bit with Dr. Graham-Piché about the horrible, devastating loss of a life on a bus this last week here in Whittier, California. Stick with us. Another parent wants to know, how do I find out that one thing that my kid is really good at?
Now, when they get older, they're going to kind of divide into two groups. You're going to have the kids that become verbal, and then you're going to have the kids that are nonverbal, got many more problems. Maybe they still have epilepsy or some other problem. And they kind of need different services. And the ones that get verbal, what we need to be doing with them is develop the area of strength. And that area of strength often will show up around 3rd or 4th grade, sometimes earlier. But my ability in art showed up when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, and it was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. Otherwise, it would have just been endless horse heads. Mother would say to me, why don't you draw a picture of a beach or something else? You want to broaden it out. If the kid's fixated on trains, let's teach reading with trains, math with trains. Tap into that fixation, but develop the area of strength. Some kids it's going to be art. Other kids it's going to be mathematics. So you got a 3rd grader who's smart in math, and he wants a 6th grade math book. Give him the 6th grade math book. Don't bore him with the baby stuff. But that kid's going to have trouble with reading, because the common thing is the uneven skills. And then you have the kids that are the history buffs, and these kids are often really good at writing skills. You tend to have uneven skills, but tap into their fixations and use those to motivate, but broaden. If he likes trains, just watching them, well, we're going to take that interest in trains to do some math with it, or maybe read about the history of the railroad. Tap into that motivation. One of the things I really want to talk about is we got to stretch these kids. I'm not talking about physically stretching them, mentally stretching them to do new things. I'm seeing too many kids that haven't learned how to shop, how to order food at McDonald's. So you start out, let's say it's ordering food at McDonald's or at Burger King. So you take them up there and they watch you order it. And then eventually you go in when the store's not busy, and they have to go up and order it while you're sitting at the table watching, and then you coach them. And then eventually they can go in the restaurant themselves. I can remember I was scared to go to the lumber yard alone and buy lumber. And Mother made me go. And she knew I could do it. I had bought lumber with her many times. But there's a tendency to they'll want to have somebody else there when they do it, and they've got to learn how to do things alone. And you gradually have got to kind of push it. You've got to stretch them. And I'm seeing too many kids not learning basic skills. Saw a 19-year-old honor student that actually knows how to drive that had never shopped in the grocery store all by herself. That is just ridiculous. You've got to stretch them. You push too hard, they're going to be panic. And the other thing is no surprises. No surprises. I knew all about the ranch long before I went there. I'd talked to Ann. But if you don't stretch these kids, they don't grow.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen here on Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Piché, and she is answering your questions in real time. Wanted to touch on a couple of stories that are in the news. One of them, the young man, 19 years old, who died on a school bus on Friday evening. It still chokes me up to think about it. A 19-year-old who was going to a day program. His mother put him on the bus in good faith in the morning with the expectation that he was going to be at a place where he was going to be engaged all day. Unfortunately, his regular bus driver, for whatever reason, wasn't there that day. They had a substitute bus driver. The regular bus driver had a verbal cue that he would say to him, and he would say, "Okay, Paul, it's time to get off the bus." And Paul, who was nonverbal, would get off the bus when he would hear that cue. Well, for whatever reason, that wasn't said by the substitute bus driver. Whether he knew that he was supposed to say that or not, we don't know. So Paul did not get off the bus. Now, typical bus protocol would be that when you go to park it in the parking garage, that you walk the bus to make sure that there's nobody there. We've shared on the show before that Paul was 5'11" and almost 300 pounds, so he wouldn't have been easy to miss. But that didn't happen. The bus was parked in the bus yard. Temperatures were well over 100 outside. They believe that they reached over 120 on the bus. He wasn't verbal, could not yell, could not ask for help, was trapped on the bus all day long. When somebody got on the bus to go to take it to get the kids to take them home, that's when they realized, okay, this young man is here. They called 911, they attempted to do CPR, and it was too late. He has passed away. I do want to say that the family has been amazing and have, I think we would all understand if they just said, we can't talk to anybody right now, but they have come forward and said, we want to talk to everybody so that this never happens to another family ever again. There is a vigil that's being planned for him. We believe it's happening on Tuesday night. I do want to say that we've been asked, Autism Live has been asked to do a live stream of the vigil, and we are trying very hard to make it possible for us to be able to do that. We will keep you posted about that. So those of you around the world, if you would like to watch the vigil, and if we're able to do that, we'll let you know where and how it would be on our channel that you would be able to watch that on Tuesday night. But it really, it brings it all up for us, Dr. Grandpichet, that here we are at the beginning of the school year, and it's a lot for parents to trust, whether it's that you're putting your child on a bus, or you're letting them off on a curb, or you're handing them over to an aide, or whatever it is. All parents, on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, when we hand our kids over, there's a great deal of trust.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely there is. And of course with our kids who are more disabled, then you have to have much more trust, I suppose, because you're really the child's, or in this case adults, their life is in the hands of the people who are supposed to be their caretakers. And you were speaking about it, and I was thinking there are so many things had to have happened together for this to occur. You can, of course, it's easy, as you said earlier, to blame the substitute bus driver, but really, who knows what was going on in that substitute bus driver's personal life? I mean, and yes, our caretakers always have to be reminded to turn everything else off, and that if you are a bus driver, you're not just driving these children or individuals, disabled individuals, to their day programs or to school. You are not just responsible for driving them, you're responsible for their well-being and for their lives during the time that they're in your care. And the same goes for the folks at the day center that this young man was going to. I don't know, perhaps they did call home to find out. I don't know what happened, but I mean, perhaps they didn't look into, why isn't he here today? Where is he? And the same goes for whoever taught him that sentence of it's time to get off the bus, and didn't generalize it beyond that rule that when the bus stops and everybody else is getting off, it's time to get off. Yeah. But I mean, you can blame people, but it's not really anybody's fault. It's just it's really just a wake-up call that we have to pay better attention. We have to take responsibility for the disabled folks who are in our lives. Everyone as a community, we have to take responsibility and help each other. This poor man and his poor parents, for what they went through. It's devastating. It's truly devastating.
It's a tragedy. And when you think about if at any point, I just see all these threads. There were all these threads, and if at any point somebody had picked up one of the threads and taken responsibility and said, I don't see Paul here today. Yeah. And I'm gonna look into why that is. That we could have saved a life.
And that's the problem. And everybody is so over, I guess, has too much work or whatever. The bus driver was probably rushing off to the next thing they have to do. The people in the day center and the work center who were waiting for him perhaps called home or didn't. Why? Because they're handling a lot of other individuals. And this goes back to how important it is. That's why in ABA we are so insistent on one-to-one care, or low ratio of care, more adults to children, or you know, honestly, if you had a one-to-one, or even if you had an aide on the bus who was responsible for 5 of the individuals, they would have made sure that he gets off the bus.
Exactly.
No one was at that moment fully responsible. And you know, Shannon, there's this phenomenon, I suppose, that happens in psychology called the diffusion of responsibility. If you have one person who's responsible and it is only their job, then the job gets done, no matter how many things they have to track.
Exactly.
They just check it off. If you have 3 or 4 people, it isn't clear whose responsibility it is, and then the job doesn't get done because each person thinks someone else is going to take care of it.
It's actually, I remember studying that in psychology. It's the Kitty Genovese phenomenon.
Exactly.
That
Which
Kitty, who was running naked on a highway screaming for help because somebody was trying to kill her, and all the people on the highway drove
thinking,
by.
right. And several of these phenomena have occurred also.
Yeah.
In New York, there was a situation many, many years ago where a young girl was getting raped and was screaming out, and something like 20 neighbors reported hearing it but didn't even call because they thought someone else probably has.
Well, and the powerful, empowering thing that we learn from this study that I was taught as a young woman in a college campus is that if you are ever in trouble, and we can teach this to our children, if you are in trouble, you don't yell help. You point to someone and say, I need you to help me, and then you are more likely to get more help.
Right,
because you've made that person responsible.
That's actually a very good lesson. I had not heard that, but that's a very good point. And you know, for our children and for those parents viewing right now who are concerned because you have a child whose health and welfare you entrust to someone else, you know, please give your child the lesson of what to do if they're not feeling well, if they are confused, scared, lost. And even if it's a nonverbal child like this young man was, you know, give them perhaps a bell, something that produces a loud sound, like those very small air, what are they called?
They're air horns.
Air horn, exactly. Something where the individual can say, hey, I'm in trouble, I need help right now.
Absolutely. I had mentioned yesterday that on my son's campus, they have something called Infinite Campus. It's the best thing I have ever seen in my entire life. That it's an app that the whole school, and as a parent, the whole school, whole district subscribes to it, but as a parent, you could subscribe to it. And I hear that there are many of them. It isn't just Infinite Campus. But I was able to log in, and I can get notifications about a wide variety of different things for Jem, including what his latest test scores are. I get a little text when they grade a test. But on top of that, I have chosen to get a text if he doesn't show up to class. So they take attendance at like 3 minutes into class, and if he's not there, I get a text alert saying Jem did not come to PE class. I wouldn't have known how it worked except that he was sick 2 weeks ago and I had to take him out in the middle of school. And while I was driving to school to get him, I got a text saying that he did not show up to one of his classes.
Wow.
And I thought this would be so useful for so many different things.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. That's a very good thing.
It's called Infinite Campus, and I call it Infinitely Fabulous.
I mean, and my children are, they have Net Classroom, which I'm not sure it has that function, but it does inform you of their projects, grades, you know, what they're doing in school and so on, which is very good.
It's great for the EF side of things too, so that I can keep track without having to bug the teachers about what assignments are due when.
Absolutely.
If something's missing, I know exactly what it is. It's a pretty fabulous thing. All right, we are, do you want to take on the neighborhood law?
Absolutely, yeah, let's talk about that.
This is the other thing, and we're going to be talking with a member of the Autism Society of America in the next hour about this. On the San Francisco Bay Area Autism Society blog site, you can read the entire article right now. There is a neighbor who has filed a lawsuit against another neighbor who has a child on the autism spectrum. The child had engaged in some behaviors that were mildly annoying, but nobody being hurt. He kicked a couple of tires on a car, threw something over somebody's fence, has made noises from time to time, but not hurt anyone. But the neighbor filed a lawsuit. It got so contentious that the family of the child with autism moved.
Wow.
moved, okay? And you would think at that point that the neighbor would then stop.
Drop it, yeah.
But the family still owns their home and is renting it, and they are pursuing it. There is a hearing on Tuesday in court in Santa Clara, California, where the neighbor is asking for the child to be declared a public nuisance.
That's so unbelievable to me.
Isn't it? It's horrifying. And if you read the blog, you will see that there are a lot of legal ramifications for all of us if this happens. If this judge unknowingly says, okay, we're going to call this young man a public nuisance, it has ramifications for each and every one of you that's watching.
Absolutely.
And it cannot be allowed to happen. But so disturbing to me, and I had said to you during a break, I think one of the things that is the most disheartening to me in life is when we see a moment in which our kids are struggling and somebody else says, well, this is inconvenient for me. Boy, the autism mama tiger bear comes alive, and I go, oh, you poor thing. This is inconvenient for you for 5 minutes. This is inconvenient for him for his whole life. How about you grab a whoopee and suck it up for 5 minutes?
Yeah, and how true is that, Shannon, of all of us? Like, in other words, there's so many things that are in part of each of us that might be inconvenient for someone else.
Absolutely.
And the truth is, we all live in one society, and we have to learn to live with each other. In this particular case, you know, I have to say, I can, if I want to try, and I didn't really know all the details, so I'm glad you told me, but let's assume that it was, so I think to begin with, let me just say, having known, now that I hear the details, to me it appears like this is just someone, this is malicious, you know, acting out in this way and going after a family like this and pursuing a lawsuit is just so malicious. In fact, I think the vast majority of lawsuits in this country, to be honest, are dishonest. They're just dishonest. You know, you have people who claim injury all the time when it absolutely never occurred. You have people, what are you gaining from this? Nothing. You're just, and even if the judge realizes how much nonsense this whole thing is, that family is going through hell right now.
Yeah.
They have to deal with getting lawyers, dealing with a lawsuit. Do you know how much money goes into that? I mean, it's just not right.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly wrong to have to go through that just because your child has some behaviors associated with a disability. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's sort of my personal thing on it. And having said that, yes, I have been in many situations in hotels and other locations where there's a child who's disruptive. There's a child who doesn't understand that their behaviors are disturbing others, and that's because they have autism or something else, and because they are not able to see other people's perspectives. You know, as a neighbor, instead of causing more grief for this family and more trouble, you could have perhaps started a fund that would allow a behavior analyst to be hired who could then go and teach the child how to not make noise and how to not throw things over the fence and so on and so forth. We all have a duty to do something proactive to help each other. It doesn't matter if it's your child or someone else's. You can help instead of causing that family even more of a headache.
Absolutely. And I don't want to leave out that one of the things, in addition to declaring him, they want an injunction declaring him a public nuisance. They are also asking for not just proof that he has autism. Like, I would understand it if they said, well, we want, you know, a doctor to go on record saying that he has autism and that's why this is happening. They are asking to breach all of his privacy issues, to get all of his files from the day program that he goes to therapists, to, you know,
for the purposes of what?
For, I guess, to prove their point that he is a menace. But in any case, to take away his right to privacy. It's unbelievable, and it's something that not only do we need to speak up for this family, but everyone needs to speak up to make sure that this doesn't go on the books, because it will be cited by other people. It will come home to roost. So we will be talking about that with somebody from the Autism Society in the next hour as well. But I think we should take a break, and then I want to come back. We've had a rather long message from somebody this morning dealing with a 10-year-old who never had the benefit of early intervention that I really would like to have you address.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing, and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet. We've been talking about a wide variety of things happening in the news and your questions as well. We had a question that came in this morning. Hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. As always, love your show and all your advices. We have a 10-year-old with ASD, never had early intervention, who struggles with irritability and mood swings daily. That sounds like me. I don't mean to make light at all. He has been on different medications, but none seem to work. We tend to send him to a quiet area to relax and calm down before the storm, and sometimes it works, while many times we are too late. My question is, how long do we need to continue sending him to a quiet area to calm his anxiety? He's getting older. We do know that changes in routines are a trigger, but sometimes we don't know why his mood changes. We have a routine schedule with PECs, with rewards. He is verbal for scheduling, but he struggles with those changes too when we need to go to the next PEC. How long do we have to keep him in routines to avoid tantrums and meltdowns, since life does change, and we like for him to understand that? Is this our normal with him? We are so stressed. We feel we're walking backwards in age. Please, some advice. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm thrilled that you wrote in, and I'm thrilled that you were so honest about what's going on, and I'm thrilled that we have someone of Dr. Graham-Pichet's knowledge and caliber to help you so that you don't feel like you're walking backwards.
Right. And I cannot stress how important it is that you get professional help now. And by that I mean you need a behavior analyst who can help with a program. The fact that you didn't have early intervention doesn't matter. You are still you need to get ABA right now. A lot of what you're talking about is stuff that is dealt with in ABA. The fact that he has mood swings and you can't really identify what's causing the mood swing basically means that you don't know what the function of his behavior is. You don't know why he's upset. ABA figures out exactly why he is upset, what is he trying to communicate with his mood swings and irritability and how you can fix it. So a behavior analyst would do what's called a functional assessment and would identify exactly under which circumstance which behavior means what. So when he does this, it means he wants this. When he does that, it means he wants that. And then it will help us teach him better ways to ask for those things rather than having a tantrum or showing irritability. Now, as an example, what you're trying to do, because you think some of why he gets upset is because his routine is messed up. And that's entirely possible. A lot of children don't like their routine to be changed, but a deeper reason for that is because they don't know what else is coming, so they lose control of their schedule and their life, and it's scary. It increases anxiety. Well, imagine if you didn't know from minute to minute what's going to happen next. Like, I could be in the middle of doing something and someone would come and say, come on, it's time to go do something else. That's very anxiety provoking. So it is very important to have a visual schedule that is not a PECS schedule. A PECS, Picture Exchange Communication System, is a communication system. What you're talking about is a visual schedule. A visual schedule will have the activities of the day listed. Now, it will help him perhaps if he can actually put those activities in an order, and you can talk to him and say, first we will do this, then we will do this, so that it's not just a visual thing that's on the wall. I'm amazed sometimes when I train like day programs or schools and I go out there and I see that there is a visual schedule, but no one even points it out to the child. So it's more there for the teacher or the aide than it is for the child, whereas really the purpose of that is to let the individual, the child, know what's coming next, and also to know the duration of time that you're going to be engaged in each activity. So sometimes it helps to have a timer for each activity so that the child knows when it's over and when they're going to transition to the next thing. Now, having said that, I don't even know if transitioning from one activity to the next is one of his issues. You would need an FBA, you need to do a functional assessment in order to identify if that is something helpful to him. That would be an antecedent modification where you're changing something in the environment to help him stay calm. Now, it sounds like he does sometimes. You're able to catch it. You can tell that he's about to get upset. Well, in behavior analysis, we would teach him to identify that himself and to actually tell you, I need a break, or to at least start to do something that calms himself or soothes himself, like breathing exercises, or just ask for time out or something. And also, if he needs to calm down, if that is something that helps him, perhaps you want to give him some of those noise canceling headphones, excuse me, because that might help him to actually shut out irritation or noise from the environment.
Yes. You want to take a minute?
Oh, I have like a million other things to say still. So, it's very, very important to identify kind of the reason for the mood swing, for the irritability, to give our children ways out to reduce the frequency or the intensity of demands that are placed on them, but also to push them. So you don't want to just take everything away and say, hey, yes, sure, you can have, free time all day long. Obviously, we all need to be productive and do something with our lives, but it is important to identify how to make that fair. And routines do help. There's a million other things that can be done to teach him how to calm himself, how to not get angry. Most of the time, not all, most of the time, all of the time, we get angry, we get upset because our point isn't coming across, because people don't understand what we want or what we want to avoid. And that's really what's happening. If there was a better way for him to be able to express what he wants and what he wants to avoid, that would be the PECS program if he was nonverbal. But you mentioned that he's also verbal. So it makes me think that you could use the PECS program to teach him to communicate, but you should also have a behavior analyst who is using the PECS program to get him to verbalize and to actually speak. So, if he's a verbal individual, the fact that you didn't do early intervention, put that behind you, and please get into behavioral intervention now, because there's a million things that you can do to help structure his life better.
And I just want to say, I don't know what your financial circumstances
Right.
are, and I don't know what the rest of I don't even know what country you're in, from what you've written into us. But there are so many different ways that you can get help and support that are ABA now. And if you need to write to me and we can figure out together what it is you need, it's very possible that you have insurance that would cover this.
Yes, if you're in the States, that's absolutely true. We have, what, 40 states now?
Yeah, it's very possible and if that isn't, there are other avenues that you can go down to. And trust me, if financial things are a concern, there have been other people that have been able to figure that out, and I can help to point you in some different directions,
and
right?
we have Medicaid coverage now, of
Exactly.
course. And if you're not in the States, then you have access to things like IBT and skills. I
Exactly.
mean, that's why we built those websites, is to be able to help people.
But what I want to describe to you right now is that you're trying so hard, and you're doing things, and you're like, but I feel like we're going backwards. And I always remember, somebody telling me about the flies that you find on your windowsill by the screen, because those flies will go like this against a screen until they die. They
Yes.
never turn around and go, look, there's a whole room that I could fly around in. And I'm telling you that right now you're the fly against the screen. You're so close. You're so close, you're here and you're getting access to good information, but I need for you to turn around and see that there's a whole bunch of stuff, because right now, with the interventions that you're doing, you're in the neighborhood, but you're not getting it done right. So it's as though you've taken your car, I'm queen of the bad metaphor, it's as though you've taken your car
great.
to the gas station and said, I need to gas it up, and you take and put the gas into the front seat and go, I don't understand why it's not working.
Right.
You're there, but we just have to get you on the right track, and that is going to take some professional help. You owe it to yourself and to the rest of your life and to this beautiful 10-year-old's life. You've got to bump it up enough to get somebody in to get it on board, and then you can be maintaining it maybe yourself, but you need to get that help and support, or you're going to keep feeling like things are going backwards.
Absolutely, very well said. I love those metaphors, by the way. I'm going to use them.
My bad metaphors.
Especially the fly one.
Yeah.
But what and sometimes as parents, we're so overwhelmed as it is. We're so tired, and it's just so much to endure that we think, well, I just can't deal with it anymore. Yeah. But here's what it is. You actually are dealing with it, because every time he tantrums or gets upset, it's a drain of energy on you, and you're the one that has to take care of things. And he's 10 and getting older, and it becomes a little bit more worrisome for you. And it really, as you said, it just doesn't feel good. Stop spending your energy on actually intervening. Use your time and your energy to get help for someone else to intervene. So instead of trying to deal with the behavior right now, try to deal with getting funding for an intensive or comprehensive ABA program so that you can get professionals in here to help him. This is why that's why I always say, like, as Hillary Clinton says, it takes a village.
Yeah.
It truly, with ABA, with these types of issues with autism, you need support. You need 4 or 5 people who are trained and involved and ready to be there and take care of issues, because this is not something for one parent to take care of alone.
Yeah, you need it and you deserve it.
Absolutely.
And your kid deserves it. That is going to take some work on your part, but you know what we always say here on the show, we'll hold your hand, we're in this together. You want to write to me or call me, you can write to me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. Let's turn this around and get you flying around the room instead of banging your head against the screen. What say? All right, we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much. A programming note, we want to make sure everybody knows, so we do have you next Wednesday,
yes,
but then we do not have you the week afterwards. Kelby and I will be in Dallas, and you will be in Australia.
That's right.
We're going to be with Temple Grandin with your questions. It's very exciting. We're thrilled about that, and with a whole host of other people in the field of autism. So make sure if you've got questions that you're writing them in for next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to take a break. We're going to go to the A Word ongoing documentary. I guess I should have to stop saying that now, because we filmed the final episode with Jack Riley, which we debuted here last Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, the A Word will continue on. We're hoping to identify an older child to begin following. But let's take a look at the A Word. Kelby, you told me something and I don't... Oh, we are going to show the final one right now, Calby says, so that you'll be able to see the last day of therapy with Jack Riley and to see how much progress this little man made. What an amazing family. When we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I believe it'll just be with Shannon today. We'll see. And we're going to be talking with somebody from the Autism Society of America about what you can be doing about this Santa Clara case of the neighbors wanting this young boy with autism declared as a public nuisance. And then later on in the program, we have Vince Redmond, licensed marriage and family therapist, that's going to be with us as well. But first, here is the A word.
My name is Jack Riley.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. I sing Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
So Jack Riley, how old are you?
6.
Are you in first grade?
No, it's going to be first grade though.
So what are you in now?
I'm going 0th grade.
You're in what do you call 0th grade?
Kindergarten.
The A word.
I think that word was far worse than we ever expected.
Yeah, I remember I kicked the garbage can when we were outside. My foot hurt. I remember that. And, that wasn't a very good day.
Say yeah, there we go. Good job.
Green or orange?
What is it? Let's race.
What's your dad's name?
Like
It's.
I
guess it's a pretty good example of what it could look like. I mean, there's struggles for all kids, but the fact that they were, Cheryl and Mike were so great, you know, taking in our parent training and utilizing the tools that we gave them and being on board with us and being consistent. I feel like consistency is so important because sometimes I know when parents come home, it's just easier for them to just give the child whatever it is that they need because they've had therapy all day. But consistency, I feel, is so important. And that's, you know, how you get over, you know, their behaviors, their difficulties, and yeah. So, yeah, consistency is key. And it's obviously worked for them.
Like that, okay? Ready? You can do it. 1, 2, 3. Yay! Good job!
Good job, Jack. We adore him, so whether you do the right thing because of that, you're doing something because of it.
I think I saw
coincidentally, some of it's right.
When we first, you know, you hear autism, and of course I did all the online research to scare you to pieces, and you know, one of the things that probably hit me the hardest was that he's not supposed to be a kid who likes affection. He's not supposed to be a kid who's going to put out affection, and of course that's not true. But you know, what did we know at the time? So I think then, and it's in both of our nature that we thought we could love it out of him, which is probably one of the best things that we ever did.
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm going to marry somebody.
Yeah.
Eloise.
Eloise? You've got a lot of contenders, though, for who you might
Yes,
marry.
I do.
Who else might you marry?
She's the only one I'm going to marry.
Oh, yeah?
I hope.
And as I said many years ago, I want him to date. I think that forms you. It informs everything in your life. You know, getting your heart broken, breaking a heart, confidence, insecurity, everything's informed by dating. And I really want him to do that. And to me, that's a typical behavior.
Just that, I don't know, I mean, he's just such a cool kid. It's just, we are amazed every day at some of the stuff that he says and does, and feel very, I guess, honored, privileged to be his parents.
Well, what if Mommy asks you to eat broccoli? What will you do?
I would eat it, but I don't like it.
Okay.
It just tastes like, because I don't like eating trees, and that looks like a tree.
That's true. You don't like eating trees?
It looks like a small tree, like this big a tree.
Yeah.
That's one thing that autism has done for us. If I just don't know that if you don't go through this, that you, I mean, I was never someone who lived in the present very well. I tend to look to the future a lot, always planning what's next, and boy, he helps me to live in the present, because you just have to. You have to appreciate every little thing.
Part of me wants him to forget that he ever even had therapy, just to grow up and make memories, make friends, and yeah, be successful in life.
Perfect. Now I'll pull the other bunny in. You did it! Design escape.
It's not a death sentence. A lot of joy and growth, and when you find the fun, it's probably bigger than it ever would have been with a typical kid, because you work so hard for it. And that's about it, I think.
Can you take this off?
Yep.
Makeup.
Temperamental star.
Nailed it.
Hi everyone! Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and we thought it'd be really fun to teach you a gluten-free stuffing recipe with help from Breads from Anna. Now this is a 2-day recipe, and so day 1 we're going to make this bread. Here's what you're going to need. 1 package of Breads from Anna bread mix, 1 packet of active dry yeast, 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons sugar, 1/4 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of warm water, 1 teaspoon ground sage, thyme, rosemary, 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, and then a pinch of tarragon, onion powder, marjoram, and garlic powder. On day 2, when we put the stuffing together, here's what you'll be needing. 6 tablespoons of butter, 1/2 bulb of fennel, 1 chopped onion, 2 chopped carrots, 1/2 cup of gluten-free chicken broth, 1 teaspoon of ground sage, thyme, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and pepper. All right, step 1, we're gonna dissolve our sugar into our water. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our active yeast. We're gonna dissolve all these together. So we're gonna just set this aside. Now we're gonna take our bread mix right on over to our mixer. So first things first, we're gonna put all our liquids together before we add in our dry bread mix. We're putting in 3 eggs, our oil, apple cider vinegar, water, and our water, yeast, sugar mixture. We're gonna blend these all together. So once our liquids are all mixed together, we're gonna go ahead and add our bread mix. We're also going to add all of our spices now. Okay, now that our bread's been mixed, we're going to spoon this into a bread dish, and we're going to let it rise for about an hour. Okay, so now that we've let this rise for about an hour, we're going to bake it at 375 for another hour. All right, it's been an hour, so let's grab our bread out of the oven. We're gonna let this cool for a little bit, and then we're gonna actually cube the bread, and we're gonna toast it in the oven just a little bit longer to dry it out so that when we add it to the vegetables, it'll make a really great stuffing. So as you can see, we've toasted our little breads here in the oven, and now what we're gonna do is saute some of these vegetables so that we can mix it in with the bread and make our final stuffing combination. So we'll start with the butter. So we're going to start with our onions so that we can make sure these are good and cooked before we add the other vegetables. They cook a little bit longer. Okay, those are looking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and add our fennel, our carrots, our garlic, and then all our spices. So you're going to want to cook this until the carrots especially are nice and soft. Our vegetables are pretty soft here, so what we're going to do is go ahead and mix this with our bread. We're also going to go ahead now and add our ½ cup of broth. So once these are mixed together, we're going to go ahead and pour it into our greased baking dish, and we're going to bake it an additional 20 minutes at 350 degrees. Okay, I think it's ready. La, la, la. All right, and we can add a little garnish here. Perfect, and it's ready for Thanksgiving dinner. To learn how you can win some breads from Anna, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live. Until next time, happy holidays.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I have on my phone, on speakerphone, Jill Escher from the San Francisco chapter of Autism Society of America. Jill, we're thrilled that you were able to be with us in this very quick manner, because we saw this morning a blog on the San Francisco Bay Area blog for Autism Society, a really disturbing story of a case that's coming up for a hearing on Tuesday. We talked about it a little bit this last hour. A neighbor has a lawsuit that is pending to declare an autistic boy a public nuisance. Jill, I understand that this is what's happening locally in your area. If you could tell us a little bit about what's happening and what we need to know as members of this autism community.
Sure. Just first, if people want to see the letter, our website is sfautismsociety.org, and look under the blog, and you will see it there. And that way people can get the details, maybe more so than I can share in this period we have together.
Absolutely.
What happened is this. It's a very common situation. We have an autism family who lives here in Silicon Valley. There are, in this county, Santa Clara County, there are 3,200 people with autism who are served by the Department of Developmental Services, so those with kind of more severe forms of autism. So as we know, autism is increasingly common and pervasive. And this was a family, it still is a family, with one child. It's a boy who at the time the lawsuit was filed was 9 years old. And he exhibited, autism behaviors that, frankly, people like me, I have 2 autistic kids, and our people see all the time. They were deemed by the neighbors to be so disruptive and so concerning, though, that the neighbors chose to file a lawsuit against the family to have this young boy declared a, quote, public nuisance. And they were also seeking unspecified damages for, trespass and battery. Now, what were the events that led to this? What in the world could have led the neighbors to file such a massive and draconian lawsuit against an autism family? Well, the allegations were that over the course of several years, that sporadic events occurred that disturbed the neighbors, and they were things like this: that the boy threw a bicycle helmet, that the boy kicked a car. By the way, there are no damages alleged, right? These were just acts without damage. He pulled a kid's hair. He did a variety of things like going into a neighbor's garage and taking a banana.
A banana. I mean, this is what we're talking about.
In the complaint. Yeah, these were allegations in the complaint. He took some sweets from a neighbor. He spat on the ground. These weren't things that happened like all the time, but these were like sporadic events that happened over the course of many, many years that the neighbors assiduously cataloged, all of these little actions and then compiled them into this blistering, complaint about nothing. I mean, it was, to me, a lot of people read this complaint and kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, "Oh, sounds like my kid,"
Yeah.
These are things that are now very common in the community, and by and large, neighbors are very understanding, and people work things out, and here's an example. So the plaintiff alleged that the boy threw objects over the backyard fence into their yard. Well, that's something my son has done probably 100 times. With my neighbors, you name it, sticks, toys, iPods. He's thrown it over their fence. Well, you talk to your neighbors and, you work things out. But in this case, the neighbors, for reasons that nobody really can fathom, really took this to an extreme, trying to have this boy declared a, quote, public nuisance. There is no precedent that we could find for anything like this. In fact, we think it's so repulsive to public policy to have a developmentally disabled boy declared a public nuisance that we're surprised, in fact shocked, that any lawyer would file such a case.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that's where we are, and the case remains pending.
And my understanding is that this even went to mediation, and that the neighbors refused to back down from the lawsuit.
I'm not allowed to talk about the mediation, but
Okay.
the fact is that, yes, it did go to mediation, and it did not settle. So the plaintiffs are moving forward extremely aggressively with some of the most aggressive discovery requests I think one can possibly imagine. They're seeking all kinds of therapeutic, school, regional center, medical, even support group records for this boy, dating back years. They want to get every bit of information about every action that can support their claim that he's a quote-unquote public nuisance. What concerns us is not just the incredible horror that this family has been through, and the amount of anguish they've had to endure on top of all the stress of having a child with a neurological disorder. If this could happen to this family, this could happen to any family.
Yeah.
It could happen to my family for sure. I have 2 autistic kids, so it could happen to me twice.
Yeah.
It could happen to anybody who has a kid with non-volitional autism-related outbursts or impulsive behaviors. Now, in the state of California, if you're going to file a claim in Superior Court, as these plaintiffs have done, you have to allege a minimum of $25,000 in damages. And in this case, there were, obviously there's hair was pulled, the car was kicked, but there was no actual damages alleged. There were no injuries, there were no dents, there's no nothing. There's nothing that came close to meeting the $25,000 jurisdictional minimum. But what the plaintiffs did that is so disgusting, frankly, is they made up for that by alleging that the family, that the boy's autism reduced, and autism behaviors, that is, reduced property values in their neighborhood by some unspecified amount. So they're seeking damages to compensate themselves for their quote-unquote, reduced property values. I mean, it's jaw-dropping, as I said, that any attorney would even think about filing a claim like that. It seems to violate every code of ethics I've ever read. But nevertheless, that's what they're doing to try to kind of, get a loophole around some of the jurisdictional rules.
It's, I think disgusting is the right word, and beyond disappointing. We were making the point earlier that, first of all, I think our community needs to support this family in letting them know that they're not alone in this. But the other consideration here is that this does, as you said, affect all of this. If this could happen to this family, all of us, myself included, if we are a parent of an individual who's on the autism spectrum, if this were to go forward, and if this young man were to be declared a public nuisance, and they were to be able to get compensation because their property was devalued just by him living next door, then we all need to be frightened. So I know at this moment in time there is no call to action, but you wanted to get the word out there, and we appreciate the Autism Society doing that. But I'd like for you to give the website so people can be staying in tune to your website if there is a call to action at some point.
Yes, okay, again, I'll repeat our website. It's sfautismsociety.org, and we'll post updates on the blog. The reason for the timing, obviously, we've been involved trying to help this family for some time, but we didn't really announce it till now because this motion that's coming up on Tuesday is something of a milestone. It's a motion on these discovery requests, these highly intrusive requests for all the families, all the child's personal information from so many sources. And, we thought that the case has now come to such a point of extreme absurdity that, people should know about it. Also, people wanted to attend the hearing. Remember, it's not a time to protest. It's not the time to make a fuss. It's just to sit and hear the court proceedings. Albeit they will be very short, that people could go if they wanted to. That was the purpose of it.
Yes.
At this point, we have been inundated with calls and emails this morning from people who are not only expressing their concern about this, but really do sincerely want to help, and they do see the broader public policy implications at stake here. So, if the family, this is the family's case. It's not our case. It's not my case. It's their case, and it's up to them to decide if they want to, raise money to, hire another, for example, a civil rights attorney to help them, or if they need other forms of help. And so, really, once the family makes it clear what their wishes are, we will communicate that on our website. But
Wonderful.
Again, that's not my call.
Okay.
So,
well, Jill, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for taking the time this morning. I know it was really short notice, but thank you for taking the time to be with us and explain some of the details, because I read the article and I'm even more horrified now. And we're going to stay tuned to sfautismsociety.org. Please give our best to the family, and we're going to keep watching to see what we can do, when we can do to help support them and get this resolved in a way that does not involve violating this young man's privacy and does not involve having him labeled as a public nuisance.
Absolutely, and we wish for the same thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And again, that was Jill Escher from the San Francisco chapter of Autism Society of America. We want to thank them and Scott Badish from the Autism Society of America for helping to put this together on very short notice this morning, but we wanted you guys to have that information. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have Vince Redman, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, who's going to be helping us to figure out a wide variety of things having to go with school, homework, and other things, so that we can make sure doing what they need to do, and we'll touch on some of this with Vince. So stick with us, back after these messages. Our twins, Justin and Jessica, were premature babies, so we always were very conscientious of their development. But I think it was probably 15 months, Justin started getting really obsessive compulsive with opening and closing doors. And Justin started tantruming a lot too. These would be major tantrums that were just completely debilitating to the family.
Having to take him out of the house, put him in the car, drive around, just to calm him down.
I remember a breaking point and just thinking, you know what, we got to do something, this is not right. Once we were on the track to getting a diagnosis for autism, we started sharing that with our close friends and family. It just so happens that somebody from our older daughter's private school called us out of the blue. She introduced herself and she says, I know that recovery is possible. Those words so early in our journey were a guiding force for us. As we got more educated in knowing what is effective therapies for kids with autism, we realized quality ABA is vital to that progress. That's where we decided that CARD was the right provider for us and for our son. Justin responded very well to therapy. The behaviors were tracked, and we saw that what was being instituted was working.
Justin, what are you doing?
I'm coloring.
You are coloring. Good for you.
There was real progress, and it was progress that was tangible.
I just remember when he made a sentence, he said a sentence. We were just happy about it, going, no way, I can't believe you just did that.
What's the date?
The 18th.
18th of what month?
December.
Oh, what year is it?
2007.
Oh, okay, so how old are you today then?
5.
The therapies that CARD did for Justin didn't just impact his daily living skills, but it was a positive impact on our entire family.
I'm Justin. I am in 4th grade. I like playing video games sometimes. My dream to build a teleporter machine. Like sometimes if like we're on an airplane and it's like really long, you guys just say, oh, hurry up with that teleporter machine, we're waiting on you. And I just started Friday Night Lights. This is our 3rd game of the season, and it's pretty fun. You have to be fast.
We attribute so much of Justin's recovery to CARD. Their goal was the same as our goal. We wanted Justin recovered. June 12, 2008 is a day that I celebrate every year because that is the day that Justin was deemed recovered from autism. And Dr. Doreen Grandpichet met with us, looked at him and just said, he's brilliant. You need to keep his mind stimulated because he's very smart and he has no residual traits of autism. What do you think about ABA treatment?
ABA is the one that's documented, but I think that's what I think is important with little kids, the intensity. If this kid's 2, 3, and 4 years old, he needs 20 or 30 hours a week of intensive early intervention, working one-to-one with an effective teacher. And an effective teacher knows kind of how just hard to push, because you've got to stretch these kids. If you don't stretch them somewhere, they don't advance. You push them on them too hard, they go into sensory shutdown. The worst thing you could do with an autistic 2-year-old is to do nothing with them and just let them sit there rocking. And when I was very young at 2.5, ABA type things were used on me, but it wasn't called ABA in that day. You know, my teacher would hold up a cup and she'd speak slowly. You gotta speak slowly to these kids because there's auditory processing problems. She'd say cup, and then I'd say cup, and the teacher would praise me. You know, that's very similar to ABA. You know, ABA in its original form is a little kids program. The whole idea is you're trying to get language jump-started. And I like the more flexible kinds of ABA. You've got different levels of kids. I had ABA type stuff when I was young, but then after I pulled out of it, I didn't have to go through elaborate things of getting ready for school. I still have this habit now today. I lay my clothes out the night before that I'm going to wear, so when I'm sleepy I can just get them on. And then you have other individuals where they've got to do very structured, breaking down the task analysis. This is where after you get out of the little kids and you get them talking, they kind of diverge into different levels of functioning. And a type of ABA program that'd be suitable for a very severe kid would not be something you'd want to do with a mild Asperger kid, because you're going to bore them to death and make them hate school.
Absolutely. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's just me today, and please everybody keep Nancy and her wonderful husband Reed in your thoughts. But joining us via Skype right now is my good friend and colleague, Vince Redmond. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And Vince, like, we say nice things about you all the time behind your back. In fact, in the last hour, Dr. Granpeche was saying such nice things about you behind your back. And I like to tell people when people are saying nice things about them. But for those of you who might be just tuning in for the first time, Vince is an amazing person because he has worked with our kiddos and even adults on the spectrum for multiple decades. He's one of the lifers at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And that's one of the nice things that Dr. Granpeche was saying about you, Vince. But Vince, that you've been with the company, she was talking about the really amazing, impressive people who have been with the company for such a long time and have such a passion and have helped to train the next generation of people to make a real difference in the world. Many nice things were said. But I want to point out that you are one of the therapists that is featured in the film Recovered, which shows the journey of 4 kids from when they were little having therapy until their teenage years. But Vince is also now a licensed marriage and family therapist. So he truly is the best of both worlds, that he understands some of the feelings and emotions that go into this for the whole family. And he can put that through the filter of knowing what the intervention looks like when you're doing intensive ABA as a family. Because, we talk about, well, the ABA is for maybe 1 or 2 people in the family, but the truth of the matter is the family goes through it, and Vince gets that. So Vince, we welcome you back. We love every month that we get to spend a little bit of time with you, and I know Nancy will be sorry that she missed this time to talk with you. We've all gone back to school now, Vince.
It's all started again.
It's all started, and some of it's good and some of it's, bumpy.
It's anxious. It's
Yes.
definitely anxious time.
And, we were able to talk briefly before. There have been some things that have happened that have captured the nation's attention this week about how difficult it is when we send our kids either on a school bus or we drop them off at school and we entrust them with other people, and that sometimes there can be miscommunications that are, that make things difficult for our kids, but sometimes that miscommunication can literally lead to a loss of life. The worst possible case scenario. So we thought it would be good to back up a little bit this week and talk about how we strengthen our relationship with schools and with day centers where we're taking our young adults, and how we can proactively encourage communication of the highest level, Vince, because we have so many people who write into us and say, I have the hardest time getting somebody to communicate and tell me what's happening at school. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. How do we strengthen that communication?
Yeah, and I look at this into 2 different parts based on the recent story about the substitute aide on the bus who didn't have the right information, didn't have any information on the child, was really just, kind of thrown into that coverage, and then obviously it led to a very tragic ending. We'll start there. The first thing that, and I've seen this with a couple other kids that I thought was a great idea, is the family, and in these cases it was with CARD as well. They put together a notebook that was called About Me, and it was about the child. It talked about the child's food allergies. It talked about the child's reinforcement system. It talked about what times they needed to be at what places, what times were certain therapies. It was basically a guideline on the different types of strategies, different types of supports that the child needed throughout the day. Also, it highlighted any medical, concerns that they had. And what they did, it was just a very separate, two-leaf folder that was in the classroom. It was used for substitute teachers, it was used for substitute aides, and it was used for any new professional that was going to be coming in and working with this child. It was a kind of a quick reference to who that child was, what that child needed, and pretty much for the most part, most of those questions could have been answered. And unfortunately, nothing like that was done in that case that hit the headlines. And so I recommend that for all our kids. That's not just for kids that are, on one end of the spectrum or the other. I recommend that any kids that are in school that has aid supports or that has some type of, IEP and they have specific needs, that we create together just a very quick reference of who the child is, what are the child's needs, who their medical contact numbers are, what are their food allergies, what are their reinforcement strategies, what are their behavior intervention plans. Those are in there as well. So then this way there's a quick reference in the, at school, in the child's backpack or whatever environment, daycare that they're in, so that there's always going to be something there that can be read and immediately they can get to know who that child is.
I think that's a brilliant idea, Vince, really. And it will take us a little bit of time to do it, but it could actually be a labor of love, that it's kind of fun, that you could have the individual work on it with you, that it could be a learning tool for them while they're learning at it. It could be a way that they're learning their information on a regular basis. The Book of Me, I think that's a beautiful idea. And so important, because I don't know, I see this from other parents, and I've experienced this from time to time, that sometimes people in schools think that, I don't know what they think. I don't know if they think our kids are all interchangeable or the aides are all interchangeable, but you can spend a whole lot of time writing things into the IEP for a teacher or for an aide to follow the behavior intervention plan, and the school takes that very seriously, right? Because it's a legal document. But these people get sick, and they're not there one day, and it's so interesting that they go, well, a sub will take over. Right. They could have paid for 12 days of training for the teacher, but then the teacher's sick one day, and you say to them, what's going to happen? They go, well, the sub will come and take over, and somehow the sub is supposed to know everything that somebody else got 12 days of training for. It's a little crazy to think that somebody can just walk in and be able to do what that other person could do.
Right, and it's really impossible for especially if we're talking, teachers that are covering SDC classes, right? So they're going into special ed classes that pretty much everyone in the class is on an IEP, has different goals, different behaviors, different reinforcements, different allergies, different medicals, blah, 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 different supports. There's so many different things that it's impossible. It's not a blame, it's not a finger point, it is impossible for a school district to be able to cover all of those needs. So my approach again is, instead of being reactive, we be proactive, right? And we set it up so that something doesn't fall through the cracks, that we help the teachers, we help the aides, we help those substitutes by, hey, don't worry, we know you just got the phone call at 6 o'clock this morning that you can cover this class. Here's a quick profile of the child. Yeah. It takes 5 minutes to read. They can look it over. They now have a good idea of what that child is, rather than having to go through an 87-page IEP or something like that.
Which no one would have the time to do in those circumstances. Let's just be honest about that. Yeah. No one, I've been a substitute teacher before, and you go in and you have like 5 minutes before, if you're lucky, you have 5 minutes before the kids. Sometimes, they call you after the day has started. Right. And you're going into a classroom and relieving maybe a vice principal, and if you're lucky, they hand you a piece of paper that's got a lesson plan on it. So I think it's a great idea to have this information, Vince. So great idea to have the book, The Story of Me, but then we need to talk a little bit about, on a day-to-day basis, a lot of times we've got parents that are writing into us saying, I wish I knew what happened today from the teacher that's normally there and from the aide that's normally there. I wish I got regular updates. What kinds of things have you seen work in the past? Because I'm sure that it's not a one-size-fits-all, but what kinds of strategies have you seen be effective?
A couple of things. So the first thing is and I know we've talked about this before on several different shows, is just communication with the teacher before school starts and then all the way through. And by that means, having meetings with them, setting up, one of the things that I've consistently heard from teachers, and I think it's very, it's a reasonable request, is they don't have the time to write notes for all their kids, or it's too cumbersome or too time consuming to be able to leave detailed notes for all their kids. Now, again, if you're in a classroom that has all kids and they all need to be communicated, we need to make it easier for them. And that's one of the strategies that I think is helpful, is actually creating a sheet that will not only give us information, but it will be easy for the teacher to fill out. So either be a sheet of, how were the behaviors, and we have a ranking scale, or there's specific behaviors, or are we talking, how was he socially with other kids? Whatever whatever information we're going, we can make a sheet that the teacher can check off and then leave a quick note on the end, or any communication that they need to give to you in regards to the next day. I found that to be really successful for most for most teachers, because they see that we're trying to help them make it easier, right? They're oftentimes a lot more giving of information when they see that we too are trying to make it easier for them. By just handing them a blank book with lined paper and say, hey, leave me notes every day, that oftentimes becomes too daunting of a task for them, and they don't have the time to do that. So again, to adapt to them, be proactive, try to help them, and just create a document or create a form that's going to give you the information the quickest way for the teacher.
Absolutely. And I want to say too, for parents that are watching, that you do have the ability to write in under the accommodations on your IEP for things that you want to ask for that aren't goals. And that's an ideal place to write something. You can put something in there about, this is the way in which we will communicate. But my advice to you, having gone through this myself and gone through this with many other parents, is if you ask for communication to be of that nature, make sure that you write in the phrase the responsibility for getting the sheet filled out and put into the backpack. Make sure that you assign the person that you want to be responsible for that, because for some of our kids that have executive functions issues, think about that. If they're responsible for taking the long walk up to the teacher and having the teacher write, he didn't pay attention in school today, getting it in the backpack and getting it back to you, what's the likelihood that's going to happen?
Right.
So I think having the teacher responsible for it, or another adult, and get it written into the IEP that they're responsible for it. Otherwise, you're not going to see the piece of paper, is my advice. I was saying earlier in the previous hour too, Vince, that one of the things that I'm loving right now, my son's school, he's now in 7th grade, he has something called Infinite Campus, which is an app that does a lot of the communication for us, not all of it, but I have to say that because it's communicating a bunch of things on a regular basis to me, the parent, my needs from the teachers has been much less, so that the quality of the interaction when I do write to the teachers is amazing. It gives me updates on assignments, grades, attendance, and if anything is missing, it automatically updates it, and the teacher doesn't have to do anything different. They just take their attendance, and it sends a message to me if he's not there. They grade their papers and put them into their grade book, and it immediately sends a message to me and tells me what he got on his quiz. It's fabulous. Are you seeing more and more schools doing this kind of thing?
Yeah, many more schools are starting to become more automated, exactly like you're saying. They have chat rooms online, they have message boards to leave notes back and forth, they have private message boards that can, for obviously confidentiality's sake. And then like you were saying, you're kind of the academic tracker where you can track their work, you can track what they're doing. Many schools and many districts are starting to implement that more, some more than others. I know for my own personal daughters, there's a system set up in the school and there's a system set up in the district, but it's up to the responsibilities of the teachers if they use it. So you get one teacher here, one teacher there, and that's it. So it becomes a little bit more disheartening there because it's kind of scattered. I wish we could get that for all of it, but I think what you're seeing is the wave of the future. I think within the next couple of years, all the districts are going to have a platform to where they can communicate with families with the touch of a button. And I think that's going to help a lot of our problems as well, because we can create different automated ways for us to check and see how our kids are doing throughout the days.
And then on the other side of this, Vincent, in fact, somebody just wrote in a question for Nancy and I about this. How do we encourage our kids to tell us about the school? Somebody wrote in and said, "Hi, Shannon and Nancy, just wondering, when were your sons able to tell you about their day at school? My son just started kindergarten and not able to tell about his day, needs some encouragement and thanks." Because we still, I have some boundaries in place with Jem that he has to be able to tell me at least a couple of very specific different things, including who he sat and had lunch with and what they did during lunch.
Right.
And I have questions about other things as well that are a little fuzzier in terms of what the parameters are. But he has to be able to tell me at least 2 things about his day every day. But I remember starting that in kindergarten, and it was like pulling teeth, Vince.
Right.
What help can we give this mom and everybody else watching for how do we foster that in our kids?
Well, I love what you guys, what you're saying that you're doing with Jem. I think the first thing we want to do is for our kids to ask how their day was is a very broad stroke, a very general question, right? And they don't know how to answer that because there's so much that happened in their day.
Yeah.
So it can be very overwhelming. So my first suggestion is that we isolate it to certain activities or certain times of the day. What did let's say there was a project they turned in. Did your teacher like your bunny project? Or did you eat lunch with Jessica? Specific detailed questions that we can build upon, right? Then what did you and Jessica play? And then we can say, what is your next project that, Mrs. Bass gave you, or what have you, right? We start with very finite periods or finite situations of the day. We ask them about those, and then we can build on it as time goes by in their memory, their recall, and their abilities to communicate continue to improve. Then we can build to more general areas of what did you do at recess? What did you do in English? What did you do after school? Those types of things. But to start, we want to start very finite, very, very defined questions, and then move our way backwards.
I love that, Vincent. Thank you for reminding me, because you reminded me of what I do all the time. I go, "How was your day?" Right? Which is so open-ended. Or else I think it's slightly better, but not much better. I'll say to him, "Did you have a good day?" And what's he going to say to that? "Yes." And
Right.
then the conversation
Yes,
is
time.
over. So I love you saying, "So what did Mrs. Bass think of your homework assignment?" That cannot be answered with a yes.
Right.
Or an okay. It has to have a little bit more information. So that's absolutely brilliant.
Right.
I think those things are so helpful. And of course, and the thing that I always forget too, that you reminded me of, is that we have to reinforce them for when they do give us an answer, no matter even if it's an answer that we didn't like,
right.
To make it worth their while to do that. So thank you.
And their confidence is going to go up when they're able to answer a question. When they answer a question and we give them a positive response, we're more likely to get more information the next time we ask.
It's so very true. And maybe the same is true for the teachers. When they communicate with us, we need to make sure that we reinforce them for that, so they don't feel like it's just all negativity.
That's a very good point. Extremely good point. We can't use the communication as just a way to complain, or a way for them to feel that we're evaluating them.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is communication on how the day went, of course, how the child did, but also a way of communicating, "Hey, I sent his signed paper, it's in his backpack if he doesn't turn it in."
Right.
The teacher writes back and says, "Hey, just to let you know, tomorrow's a short day." Those types of things, a lot of, communication. And you're right, just saying thank you to the teacher, saying, "I appreciate you, letting me know this," saying that, "Oh, thank you for reminding me, this is great information," really boosts their confidence and makes them feel that the information they're giving you is important.
Yeah, as a former teacher, I know what a big deal that is, because you try not to as a teacher, but very quickly you do identify that there are some parents that you refer to them as the really on it parents, that are on it and you feel like they're on your team to teach. And then there are the parents who just want to complain, right? Because those are in every group. So Vince, what I'd like to do is take a short break and come back and talk with you about the never-ending joy of homework, and
Right.
strategies that you can share with us, so that those of us who are trying to do core math don't want to light our hair on fire and run into traffic, because that would be me. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with more Vince Redmond, licensed marriage family therapist, talking about homework without tears. Stick with us.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, all right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay? And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape.
Or V.
Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Bend it to you.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet, but also sometimes what feels really good is going down your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor, you still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes, but rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay. So, yep. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Or are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Just Shannon today. We're keeping Nancy and her husband Reed in our thoughts. He has been very ill this last week and she needs to be with him, and we're supporting her in that and encouraging, loving all your good thoughts for Nancy and for Reed. But right now, via Skype, we have Vince Redmond, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, but Vince is also somebody who has multiple decades of working with individuals who are on the autism spectrum as an autism therapist. So he has a global understanding of what families are going through, what they're trying to accomplish, the toll that it can take on families while you're working through some of the more challenging behavior and having a whole host of strangers sometimes in your home or trying to keep that schedule. Vince is very in tune to what it's like for those of us that are in this community. And we thank him for all of his good work. And he's here with us today. Once a month, we get to chat with Vince and have him answer questions from you guys and talk about a specific topic. We were talking about communication at school, and now we're going to shift to talking about homework. You know, I love that a lot of moms have a party right before everybody goes back to school, or the first week that they go back to school. The moms are like, yay, our kids are back in school, until they remember that the homework starts again. And then we want summer break again. Especially with this core curriculum, Vince.
Homework is work for us.
It is, and I am not ashamed to admit that I have burst into tears before at the dining room table and said, I didn't like 5th grade math when I took it. Why am I having to take it again? Because it's exactly like that. I have to go and learn what it is that he got taught so that I can do the homework with him. What do you suggest for us?
It's tough. It's tough. It's also tough because you have schools now. In our earlier segment, we were talking about how schools are becoming more automated and they're becoming a lot more connective to the families. Now we have schools that are starting to have no homework zones, where they're not having any homework, and homework is only done at school, which I think is a phenomenal idea, because what it's doing is it's freeing up the afternoons for our kids to be able to engage in the other activities that are necessary. Obviously, for our population, therapy services are very important, but also play and rest and extracurricular activities and all the other things that we want our kids to be involved in. But for the majority, and this is what we're reaching out to right now, still have an hour or two of homework a day. And I'm not exaggerating, an hour or two a day, which really, if you add that up, it's up to 10 hours a week of extra teaching that we are responsible at home to do. So how do we do this? How do we break this down? How do we, modify this? I think depending on the level of severity with your children, what we need to do is we need to start in the IEP process. We need to discuss accommodations when we're going through that process about modifying the amount of work that our kids need to do, right? Oftentimes with our kids, if they can demonstrate competency by doing 3 questions or 4 questions, doing 15 more is just going to be overwhelming. It's more of a quantity versus quality, right? So I would have that put into the accommodation section of your IEP. That is, they can turn their homework can be modified, the amount of the homework can be reduced as long as it continues to show competency in the areas that are being taught. I've seen a lot of kids be able to get that, which is great, because if they go home and they have to answer 4 math class questions or 4 history questions or 4 parts of a worksheet or something like that, that becomes less overwhelming. It becomes less anxious for them. Their resistance goes down because they know they're able to do that. You're now going to get their best effort. You're now going to get their best attempt. So we're going to be able to actually see how well they are. Couple that with a lot of reinforcement for their success, they're not going to be overwhelmed. They're actually going to show us what they can do. Doing 2 hours of homework is not going to work. We're never going to get that much work done because it's already too overwhelming. And to break it, 2 hours of regular homework is 4 hours of homework for our kids.
Yeah.
So that becomes too overwhelming. So we need to get those accommodations.
I think that that's a great idea. And again, you can write that right into the IEP under the accommodations segment. And I think schools are usually they're very willing to listen when a parent says we need to make an accommodation with something like that. So if we make, and I think your point is so well taken, Vince, that if you can demonstrate that you know how to do it in 3 problems, it's not that much of a difference from doing 10 of them. So crazy amounts of homework sometimes it just feels like it's busy work.
Yeah, it's different learning styles, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at memorization in muscle memory, like for us and you and I, and this is how we learned our math, or this is how we learned our English. It was repetition over and over again. But that's not how our children learn. Our children, they learn things, they have different strategies, they learn things at different rates, and learn it different ways. So again, as long as we can show competency, and again, it's not doing the work for them, but they can show the competency of how they're doing it, quantity isn't really important.
Yeah. And, I do think and also you said it depends on what the level of our kids are, and that's a really good point too. For our kids that are high functioning, I see some of the problems with homework is that our kids, it's a different generation, and they can do things that we were never taught in school, and it moves pretty quickly. For those of us who are way behind, especially math-wise, Nancy, if she were here, she would tell you too that the 2 of us, we shouldn't be allowed to balance a checkbook math-wise, right? And that was never our subjects. We're more the creative types, and to have to deal with some of the math that both Wyatt and Jem are doing, it's beyond us. Now, I've gotten a little bit of help from Google, especially from Khan Academy, being able to watch a short video about how to do something. But I'll be honest with you, at this point in 7th grade, it's moved beyond that. And I would have to take a calculus class to know what to do. What do you tell for those of us that do we just get a tutor? What do we do, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a combination of all of that, right? I mean, I have kids that are in high school or junior high that are taking, Algebra 2. I have a kid going in this year, trigonometry. Yeah, what are we going to do? I mean, his parents, his tutors, I mean, or his ABA staff, none of us are able to do trigonometry with him. So what does he do if he struggles? First thing we want to do is talk to the teacher about, is there any time, any office hours, any availability that they may have, either before school, after school, before class, after class, to be able to sit down and go over some of those problems. They're your number one resource at this point, because they're the ones who are teaching the class, they're the ones who have the relationship with the student. They can hopefully have a little bit of time to be able to sit down and show them where their errors are or how to follow the steps. Now, as soon as they're able to do that, then the child should be able to, as long as there's accommodations in their IEP, only have to demonstrate a couple, and they can do that either with the teacher or at home as well.
Vince, you are the king of good advice today. I think that's great, being able to go to the teacher and being honest about the fact that we can't teach it, and make sure that they have some time to make sure that it has actually been taught. Then we can follow through on it. I think that's wonderful. We're totally out of time, unfortunately, because you're just like spot on today. Just your advice, so great. We could talk to you for hours, but I thank you so much for all the work that you do and for being with us to help allay our fears. And I know that our parents that watch really help all the support that you give us.
Awesome.
So thank you for being with us.
Thank
I'm
you
going to say
again.
goodbye.
Have a great rest of the month.
Thank you. You too. We'll talk to you in October.
Okay, take care.
All right, bye-bye. We're here at the end of the show, and I want to give you a couple of programming notes. We're not doing a live show tomorrow, and I am not sure what's happening on Tuesday because, as I said at the start of the show, we have been asked if we will do the live stream of the vigil for Paul Lee, the young man who died on the school bus last Friday. We are trying to make arrangements to be able to do that. If we do, we will not be with you live on Tuesday, but we will update you so that you will have the opportunity to watch that on Tuesday night on our show. We will keep you in touch. So when we see you again, it might be next Wednesday, but until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. And thanks for all the birthday wishes. Bye-bye for now.